Hello and welcome. This presentation was prepared on the 10th anniversary of our association's journey in promoting landscape resilience in a homeowners association. In the slides that follow, I'll share a summary of the events that ended up putting us on a new landscape maintenance approach. I share this here because I realize there may be community leaders in other HOAs that may be observing similar challenges in their own landscape who might benefit from learning about how we manage to realize successful change within our own community. While serving on our community's water harvesting committee, I started to hear concerns echoed by other residents who started sharing photos with me, not only with respect to trees, but also shrubs, asking if something could be done differently. In response, I started preparing photos for our board of directors documenting poorly pruned trees. I highlighted how trees like this one were continuing to be pruned regardless of their poor state, noting the service we were paying for was degenerative. Another member raised concerns about poodling our desert native shrubs with a request that the association consider a more natural aesthetic that mimics Tohono O'Toole Park rather than a commercial property or strip mall. We also shared examples of poor timing on pruning, noting that the same shouldn't happen all year round, rather only when it's appropriate for the plants, typically in the fall. To be clear, this was not meant to knock the hard-working boots on the ground or our dedicated common area chair, but it demonstrated that our contractors require careful guidance and community oversight, since we just can't rely on our property manager or the landscape company to do the same. In response, Ms. Sandra Drain and Mr. Gerald Cody, both board members, requested that I fill the role of chairing landscape activities which dovetail with water harvesting. I mention this because I just want to acknowledge Sandra, who didn't miss a beat. As a former facilities manager, she followed up immediately by scheduling a meeting with our contracted landscapers in order to communicate our concerns, understand how things had been managed to date, and then communicate how reporting would take place moving forward. In that meeting, we followed through on a request to hold back on pruning outside of what's absolutely necessary for safety. After some initial pushback, our landscapers finally agreed, and we began to see trees respond by attempting to shade sunburned trunks with new growth. Since the community would subsequently begin to witness intercanopy restoration after having been accustomed to lion-tailing, it was critical that we communicate the changes they might witness are purposeful and well-intentioned, rather than due to any kind of negligence under new leadership. To ensure objectivity in our new approach, the board recommended I reach out to the U of A Master Gardeners Cooperative Extension for feedback on respective concerns. Understandably, the cooperative was concerned about the political challenges that come with advising an HOA, but did recommend that we stick with our original plan of consulting with a certified arborist for advice. In line with the U of A's guidance, the board of directors immediately approved hiring not one, but two independent certified arborists to give us their professional opinions. We first hired Alec McKinnon, also known as the pedaling arborist, who we learned about through a pruning workshop hosted in Dunbar Springs by Brad Lancaster. To ensure objectivity and counter any claims of bias, Alec was informed he would not be considered as a candidate for annual tree maintenance within our community. Instead, we simply wanted his objective feedback on the status quo and recommendations moving forward. Alec generously offered to host a walkthrough of our community in open meeting sessions so that residents could ask questions of a professional. As an ISA certified arborist, his communications were excellent, well-informed, and welcomed by those who participated. Alec's survey yielded a 58-page report that inventoried all the trees along our common area walking paths, and confirmed what we suspected in regards to the negative impacts associated with the current practice of lion-tailing. Sadly, 15 trees located around the main loop of the neighborhood were flagged for removal due to sunburn and disease, with the recommendation being that the remaining trees be allowed to rest from pruning so that inner canopies can be restored once again. Alec also made recommendations for things we might consider in our next contract renewal with our landscapers, the most relevant of which was to ensure that pruning takes place only as needed under the supervision of a certified arborist. Of course, we kept the community informed, notifying everyone that the professional advice of a certified arborist would guide development of our new request for proposal for landscape maintenance as required by our CCNRs. Based on Alec's recommendations, we hosted a second visit by Angelo Romeo Tree Service to formally bid on tree maintenance by a professional. To ensure transparency, we hosted this evaluation on YouTube for those that couldn't attend in person, including those who monitor social media. Angelo echoed what Alec recommended and also suggested his services wouldn't be needed for at least 1 year to allow our trees to recover from prior pruning practices. Having said that, we recognize that some pruning is inevitable for traffic visibility and safety, and those cuts are addressed, but per Angelo's recommendation, we observe respective cuts must follow ANSI A300 guidelines for the health of our trees. Coming back to that HOA paradigms, we took note that contract renewal was coming up in early 2023. Now, most HOAs will just put out the request for proposal as a formality through their property manager without giving any real consideration to competitors, but we decided to approach things a little bit differently. In reviewing our existing contract, our landscape committee saw many problems with our current approach as well as the boilerplate RFP. In response, volunteers with training in water harvesting and master gardening prepared our own detail RFP to address some of the repeating challenges we'd been witnessing to date. And a special thanks to Miss Mary Graff, who was just essential in helping us put this together. She put in many hours towards the same. The new RFP focused on Pima County Smartscape Practices while also capturing recommendations of those 2 ISA certified arborists we hired in 2022. Since this could potentially result in changes to our current landscape company, which had been serving us for close to a decade, the RFP was shared and discussed in open meeting sessions to ensure community concerns were captured in the same. The final RFP was released to 3 companies, including our current landscape contractor at that time. Volunteers in the community carefully reviewed the pros and cons of each bid and observed that Santa Rita was the only company that actually took time to respond to clarifications regarding Smartscape requirements in our RFP. This suggested that Santa Rita actually reviewed our proposal rather than just submitting a boilerplate bid. In fairness, we gave Santa Rita's competitors an opportunity to revisit their proposals and make adjustments. New proposals were submitted, but they were simply the same boilerplate responses, some with simple check marks next to our questions. This clearly demonstrated they didn't have the time to carefully consider our requirements. Of note, this exact same thing happened when we repeated the process in 2024 per requirements in our bylaws. Since things were tilting towards the selection of Santa Rita, we hosted an open community meeting with their management to ensure they clearly understood our needs and to make sure residents could also voice recommendations or concerns. Of note, Santa Rita observed that our proposal required less man-hours given the lighter touch we were seeking on the landscape, which makes sense for the slow-growing desert natives hosted in our community. As such, their proposal came in $14,000 under bid for our existing landscape contractor and more than $20,000 under bid for another competitor. In response, our landscape committee made a recommendation to hire Santa Rita with the goal of pivoting to smarter grounds maintenance while also saving our association money. A contract reflecting our needs was agreed to, and a motion to hire Santa Rita was approved, and they've been serving our community since March of 2023. Under our new contract, one of the practices that has changed includes no longer using blowers on bare soil to clear ground of small organic debris. This is common practice that leaves bare ground exposed to baking in the sun, exposes tree roots to sunburn, and removes nutrients that trees rely on for healthy growth, thus the exact opposite of climate change resiliency. Instead, we ask the material less than 6 inches in length be left on the ground to encourage an organic moisture barrier for water conservation and soil health. To further improve soil health, we require Santa Rita to use a precision approach to herbicide placement in common areas. Herbicide is allowed but restricted to common area gravel strips in front of people's homes that may host prolific growth during the summer monsoon. Herbicides are never allowed in natural areas hosting desert natives. In addition, we give homeowners the option to opt out of having herbicides applied in front of their homes with the understanding that weeds must be pulled by hand. This approach has yielded beautiful seasonal wildflower blooms during wet years. We may see those blooms peak, typically around April, and then die back in May. As wildflowers die back, we inform the community in e-blasts and newsletters that this is normal and not due to negligence. Eventually, volunteers will circle back and harvest seeds for spreading to bare areas at no cost to the association. Santa Rita has followed our guidance and halted pruning in our common areas outside of flagged items posting safety hazards. As this photo taken in late 2023 demonstrates, previously sunburned trunks are beginning to realize protective inner canopy growth, which will help shade and add mass to stressed limbs. At the same time, it hasn't always been smooth sailing. In May of 2023, right when our Palo Verdes were in full bloom, we again started witnessing the practice of poorly made and unnecessary cuts at the wrong time of year. An important lesson learned from this experience is that there's a difference between communicating with management and communicating with the boots on the ground that are actually doing the work. This is especially important given the high turnover of ground crews and loss of institutional knowledge that comes with a new rotation. To help with the same, community volunteers prepared a one-page guidance document that captures the most important highlights of how our common areas are to be maintained. We've also prepared a Spanish translation since many times crew members may not speak English, and we want to make sure our needs are understood. This approach helps reinforce practices over time given frequent turnover in ground crews. Developing personal relationships and realizing courteous communication is the best way to ensure closure on noted problems. Management may be very good at echoing what you want to see on the landscape, but it's going to be on you to ensure your goals are translating to the ground crews. They're the ones doing the work, so make sure they have the appropriate training and support, and if you need a different ground crew, make the case for replacement. This concludes the summary of our 10-year anniversary for these ongoing efforts. I want to thank everyone shown on this slide for your help and support over the years. If you're interested in taking a leadership role in your own community, please check the description of this video for resources that might help. Catch you next time.